Buonasera, Marco.
Buonasera, Dominic. Ciao, come stai?
Bene, benissimo. Grazie, grazie. So, my guest today needs absolutely no introduction for those that are seeking Italian citizenship by descent, but I'm going to do a little one all the same. So, Avvocato Marco Mellone has been on the front lines of the fight from the beginning, and he's arguably the most visible attorney fighting for the rights of Italians born abroad. He's been involved in all of the high-profile cases that are been heard and will be heard at both the Supreme or Cassation and the Constitutional Courts. Born in Napoli, and he is a graduate of the prestigious University of Bologna Law School, and now runs his practice from my favorite city in Italy and one of my favorite cities in the world, Bologna. I'd also like to acknowledge a bit of support from the moderators and the active members of the Jure Sanguinis subreddit that have submitted questions. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with this group, I highly suggest you check it out because it is the best source of information out there. The moderators do an amazing job of keeping the conversation on point, preventing flame wars, discriminatory arguments, and keeping the subjects on topic. So we will post the links to that in the show notes. So with that, Marco, we have lots of questions, lots of very anxious people seeking answers, and we have you right here at the source. So anything you would like to start with, or should we jump right into questions?
Dominic, just let me thank you for this kind invitation. So good morning, good afternoon to you and to all your friends. It is a great pleasure for me to be here and if possible to answer to some questions or clarify some doubt that your friends and the descendants of Italian immigrants have, especially in this very peculiar period of the history of Italian citizenship law.
It's definitely a challenging time, and that's for sure. So, so you're bringing the Tajani decree retroactivity front and center in the yet to be scheduled United section of the Supreme Court. Is this similar to the approach that you were taking in the June Constitutional Court hearing? And are you hoping that the cassation will rule directly on the retroactivity portion, or is this more of a legal strategy to have the court give clues or indications of how they're going to view retroactivity components for the future arguments?
Well, Dominic, let me explain what happened actually with the matter of retroactivity related to the hearing, which will take place before the United Sections of the Supreme Court. For those who follow me, on the 27th of May 2025, I was there at the Supreme Court before the first section of the Italian Supreme Court challenging the so-called minor age issue. For those cases which then were referred exactly to the United Sections of the Supreme Court. That issue, since it was the 27th of May, so 3 days after the entry into force of the law, the final law of the Parliament, which confirmed the Tajani decree, I took the chance to provoke the Supreme Court, saying, look, since we are here, why don't you also clarify if this new law is not applicable to these two cases? Because if I read the law, then I have some doubt that these new rules could be considered somehow applicable also to past cases, also to already born citizens. So since we are here, why don't we clarify also this preliminary aspect? And the Supreme Court, with the first section of the Supreme Court, with its decision dated 18th of July 2025, somehow accepted this provocation in the sense that the first section not only asked the United section face once and forever the so-called minor age issue, but also asked to the United section to preliminarily face or somehow clarify which is the temporal scope of the new law, of the new conditions, of the new restrictions that we know impact so much on the life of millions of descendants of Italian immigrants. So, I mean, the matter, the question was raised. Then it's up to the United section to give an answer also on this preliminary aspect. Let's say that we have an important chance to let the highest civil jurisdiction, civil court in Italy, say some words on this topic, which we know is the most important topic now in the world of Italian citizenship law. Now, as you said before, we are expecting the Supreme Court to schedule the final date of the hearing, which was previously scheduled for the 13th of January 2026. But due to the importance of the matter, the president of the Supreme Court decided to take some weeks or maximum a couple of months more to study and to prepare, I mean, in the most appropriate way, the hearing, which then will take place most probably in March or April 2026. So also this kind of postponement of that hearing certifies somehow the importance of this matter and of the questions which were raised by the first section of the Supreme Court. Moreover, the Corte di Cassazione, the Supreme Court, told me that in the last days, in the last weeks, they received a huge quantity of calls and messages from people all over the world, who were interested in being there for the hearing. So once again, the Supreme Court has absolutely the notion of the importance of this matter for the community of descendants of Italian immigrants.
Yeah, there was definitely a strong reaction in some of the communities that I'm a part of people wanting to come and participate and view that hearing as well. So I can only imagine how many calls were received. So for those that were cut off by the decree law, the Tajani decree, etc., at the level of great grandparents, at this moment, are there reasons to pursue a legal path? And we might want to differentiate here just a little bit between those that have a 1948 case and those that do not have any 1948 case to go through.
I mean, according to my opinion, it does not make a great difference if we are talking about now 1948 case or not. Which is important to say is that, I mean, people who did not start a case yet now shall know that, of course, we will have in the next months a response, an answer to the main question. So if those new restrictions, conditions are actually applicable to already born citizens. So if they are constitutional, if they are lawful, okay, if they make sense, I mean, they will have an answer in the very next months. But Of course, if they wait for this kind of response, at the same time, there is also a possible, let's say, risk, because nothing prevents the Italian government and the Italian parliament from adopting new law, new laws, new conditions, new, initiatives, such as they did in March 2025. Do not forget, Dominic, that in one night, the Italian government changed dramatically, let's say, the conditions and the life of millions of people. And I always say that this may happen again, especially if the government feels concretely that that law is going to be somehow declared void or unconstitutional or unapplicable somehow by the highest jurisdiction here in Italy. So starting a case now means that at least you know now which is your enemy, which is the law you are challenging. And we know that this law approved in May 2025, is weak. It's an easily challengeable law, an easily attackable law, or at least according to my opinion. But of course, I don't know if in the future the government or the parliament may come out with a more, let's say, lawful, reasonable law, which will be less attackable than the current one. So, there are advantages and disadvantages for each option. I hope that I clarify which are, according to my opinion, disadvantages or advantages.
So let me maybe repeat back to you to see if I understand you correctly. If you file a case, let's just say today, and a new law is passed tomorrow that is more constitutionally valid, and then the day after tomorrow, the Tajani decree or the minor issue fall, you would then be able to slip through the space between those laws. What I've told many of the people that I talk with, that if you file a case today, you are essentially buying insurance against future legislative issues that may arise. Is that reasonable there? Is that a fair, is that a true and valid statement?
Yes, it was exactly what I meant, Dominic. So, starting a case now is a sort of way to ensure that at least you know which is the law you are going against, because you know the enemy. But tomorrow we don't know if the situation may change again. The situation is very fluid in this period of history of Italian citizenship law. So, according to my opinion, if you can, then it's worth it to start the case now than waiting for a quite uncertain future.
Understood. All right, next question, and most of these questions come from the community. These are not questions that I just brought off the top of my head. Assuming the minor issue is struck down, what do you think the options are going to be for the people that have already received a consulate or commune rejection due to the minor issue? And is there a difference between those that have filed before the triculare on October 3rd or after the triculare on October 3rd?
Well, let me clarify one important aspect. The rulings of the United Section of the Supreme Court are, let's say, 99% binding for the judicial system. This means that all the judges here in Italy, most of times, they follow what the United Section of the Supreme Court say. This does not apply with necessarily. This does not necessarily apply with the administrative world. In other words, even if we win before the United Section of the Supreme Court, then the Ministry of Internal Affairs does not necessarily change its approach. The consulates that do not necessarily change their approach. I mean, that circular of October will not necessarily be revoked. It may happen. It's a sort of political decision of the ministry. We know in the past that, for instance, when the United Section in 2009, they faced the so-called 1948 cases, saying that people, descendants of female citizens are allowed to be considered Italian citizens. Then the ministry never somehow applied that ruling of the United Section. We know at the same time that 3 years ago, in 2022, the ruling of the United Section of the Supreme Court on the so-called great naturalization, Brazilian great naturalization, was actually followed by the Ministry for Internal Affairs. So, I mean, the Ministry for Internal Affairs has discretion somehow to say, look, I will follow or not the ruling of the United Section of the Supreme Court. So, in any case, even after the United Section, it is possible that people which were affected by the circolare of October shall be obliged to go to the court and claim for their rights before the court, even after the ruling of the United Section. I hope, of course, that this will not occur, but of course, it is a possible scenario.
So people that have been rejected, we don't know what's going to happen with them. They may have to go to court anyways to fight for their right. But in that situation, the court, following the United Section's ruling, would almost certainly rule in their favor, assuming their documents are in order and all other criteria are met.
Exactly, Dominic, exactly.
Okay. Next question has to do with 1983 Jure matrimony cases. Are all unregistered pre-1983 Jure matrimony cases now officially revoked? And again, this has to do with, is there a difference between those that were submitted before the decree law and after the decree law?
According to my opinion, they are not officially revoked, even for application submitted before the decree law. Of course, there will be the problem for applications submitted after the decree law if, let's say, the Italian spouse is not considered anymore an Italian citizen under the new conditions. So, of course, in that case, the Jure matrimony request depends on the recognition of the Italian citizenship by descent of the Italian spouse, of course. So, I mean, generally speaking, I think that, of course, the spouses of Italian descendants, their condition depends on what will occur with the Italian citizenship of the descendants. And once again, this certifies how many people are involved by the new decree, by the new law, and how many people are affected by these new conditions. It's a great fight that all of us Italian lawyers, we are facing against unjust rules, against unconstitutional rules, against unfair rules. but at the same time, all of us, we are very motivated because we haven't studied for decades Italian law for then see what is happening now with these absurd things.
Now, I can't speak necessarily to the South Americans, but I can say for the North Americans, particularly the Americans that I tend to work with the most, approximately 70% of people have been impacted. They've lost their path according to the current rules, which is a lot of people and is quite unfortunate. So 1948 cases. There's a lot of talk out there about 1948 cases. Are they still valid after the decree law, especially if they're through the great grandparent or greater? This said, nobody knows. I don't know of any cases that have been filed and heard and decided since the decree law came into effect. So I don't know if we have any jurisprudence on this. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, as I said before, 1948 cases, according to my opinion, they now depend, of course, on this preliminary but important matter related to the applicability of the new law to cases in which, of course, there is a great grandfather, a great grandparent, or grandparent who were not only Italian citizens, and when, of course, also the plaintiff was not born in Italy. So, I mean, before now talking about 1948 case, of course, we have to face and solve the preliminary matter related to the applicability of the new conditions. And talking about that, we have had some cases related, commenced after the entry into force of the decree law, which were heard by the Italian courts. Of course, we have the case of Turin and case of Mantova that when, of course, were somehow also headed to the Constitutional Court, but we have also other cases, for instance, in Palermo, cases which were commenced 8th of March 2025, that we know is a sort of very crucial and also mysterious date in the history of Italian citizenship law. The judge in Palermo, the court of Palermo, said that the cases which were filed on the 28th of March 2025 go with the past law and do not go with the new law. So according to this jurisprudence, cases filed at least on the 28th of March are safe. It's important because when we lawyers, we were informed about the intention of the government to adopt that decree, we made a big rush on that day to file as many cases as possible before the midnight of the 28th of March. So this is a first positive news. But many cases filed after the 28th of March or even after the 24th of May will be heard in the very next days and weeks. And this is the reason why I'm also confident that other national courts may raise the constitutional procedure, may start the constitutional procedure, may ask to the Constitutional Court to declare void, unlawful, and unconstitutional the new law, the Tajani decree. So the situation is quite fluid. Of course, just 7 months after the decree law, we can't have a huge jurisprudence, huge case law, but many things are occurring now in the national courts.
And I think I even saw in the last couple of days, there's been another referral or another question raised out of Campobasso as well, if I'm not mistaken. So,
well, as far as I know, there are now two referrals from Court of Torino and Court of Mantova. Campobasso, as I know, is assessing the validity of this new law, is assessing whether to refer or not the new law to the Constitutional Court, because Campobasso has many pending cases, many of them filed after the 28th of March, because Campobasso is one of the quickest courts in Italy as for cases of Italian citizenship.
So they're nothing like Veneto that has a 10,000 case backlog then.
Yes,
the next
Veneto, Venezia, I think, is the most complicated, of course, court in this sense. Even although judges are there are very productive, but of course there is a huge number of cases pending.
So for those with minor children that were not included on pre-decree law judicial filings, is it still possible to add them? Or even other family members, perhaps, that were not minor children that may have been deciding to take a consulate route and had that door closed on them?
I mean, it is possible to ask to the court, to the judge, to add new plaintiffs, actually, to the ongoing cases. Then it's up to the judge to decide if this is possible or this is acceptable or not. According to my opinion, it should be. But as far as I saw in practice, there are some Italian courts which do not actually agree, especially for one reason. Some judges say, look, actually the new law gives you the chance to register the child minor age by the 31st of May 2026. So it does not make any sense that you ask to me now to add this child to the case if you can do it after without, asking this to the court. So in an administrative way. So I saw also this kind of decision from an Italian court, not from the Court of Milano, to declare not acceptable this kind of request. Of course, it's worthy to try if you can, because of course, citizenship, the Italian citizenship by descendants, especially for the future generations. So it is clear that people are interested to save, especially the citizenship for future generations, who then will transmit, of course, then the Italian citizenship. So if possible, of course, I suggest to make this kind of attempt.
I can imagine many, many of these people are concerned that their cases will not be completed by that deadline. Therefore, they don't want their children to potentially have zero path if things continue as they are, which of course we hope they will not continue that way.
Yes, moreover, let me add, Dominic, that judges do not know that the process, the history does not end with the judgment of the court, because we know that after that judgment there is a bureaucratic part which takes even months and months or even 1 year to finally obtain the transcriptions, the registration of the birth certificates into the Italian vital records. So of course you have to consider also this supplementary work, which is supposed to be done by the 31st of May 2026. So this is another reason to be, of course, concerned.
Yeah, because that is only, 6 or 7 months away, and Comune generally don't move very quickly. If we're being honest, they tend to take their time.
Yes, talking about that, I know also, Dominic, that there is some proposal in the parliament, proposal of a bill in order to postpone this deadline. Of course, it's nothing official, okay, but it's one of the options, possible options for the parliament, because especially in the South American consulate, Italian consulate, of course, they do not have time and space to deal with all these kind of registrations of children minor of age by the 31st of May. So discussing about the possibility to postpone that deadline.
So interesting. Are there any extra risk factors that people should be considering? Example, the public prosecutor opinions have been entirely in favor of striking down the minor issue, from what I understand. And are the public prosecutors going to appear and argue against this at the United Section, or is all of this yet to be determined?
Dominic, let me say that I'm very confident about the outcome of the United Section hearing concerning the so-called minor age issue. Starting from the first moment I started this fight, this battle, I was sure that that wrong interpretation could not work. Moreover, I am pretty confident that not only the United Section will say that children minor of age or less an Italian naturalized parent lost their Italian citizenship. Not only that category of children born in US and considered US citizens, but generally speaking, all children minor of age, even born in Italy, they could not lose their Italian citizenship, because according to my opinion, this is also the argument which will explain on the day on the United Section. They could not lose their citizenship without their will. So it does not make any sense if they were born in Italy or in US, because they were citizens who never expressed the will to lose their Italian citizenship. So they just somehow had to bear the consequences of the choice of their father or of their mother. But according to Italian law, you cannot lose your Italian citizenship by descent unless you wish, or unless you do something that, according to the Italian law, provokes the loss of Italian citizenship. This is a quite clear principle that I will use on that day. Public prosecutor was in favor of this thesis, at least before the first section of the Corte di Cassazione, the Supreme Court. So I suppose that it will confirm this thesis. The public prosecutor is a sort of amicus curiae, so it's not a judge. It's a sort of person who gives an important and relevant opinion on the case, but does not take the decision. Interview, I am confident. So as for the juridical sphere, I am pretty confident that this will finally solve the so-called minor age issue.
So anybody born to an Italian citizen receives this at birth, and also anybody born in a Jure Solis country receives that citizenship at birth. And the interpretation of clause 7 verses 12, I'm not an attorney, make sure I got those right, is that the individual, not the parent, the individual must take an action to renounce that Italian citizenship. Therefore, the minor issue should be a non-issue if, so long as the child was born, at least one parent was exclusively an Italian, well, maybe not an Italian citizen.
Yes, Dominic, more generally, I mean, let me give you just an example. I have a child, I have a 5 years child. I cannot decide on his Italian. He was considered Italian citizen at birth. And me as parent, as father, I cannot decide on his Italian citizenship. I cannot provoke in any way the loss of his Italian citizenship. I cannot renounce for him. I cannot make anything. Just him one day at the age of 18 can decide if he doesn't want to be anymore an Italian citizen. This is our law. This is what always the Italian law somehow said, or our principles at least. So it does not make any sense that if your father got the US citizenship, then you, Italian citizen at birth, were obliged to lose your Italian citizenship without any will, and even without knowing this. Because Dominic, tell me how you can know if your father or your mother acquired another citizenship. You can know what happens in your life, but you cannot know necessarily what happens in the life of your father or of your mother. So it was also impossible for these children to recover the Italian citizenship once they turned 21 years old, because this is the thesis of the Ministry for Internal Affairs. Yes, but they had a chance to recover the Italian citizenship once they turned 21 years old. This is not true, because they could not know necessarily that their father or their mother had acquired the US citizenship and therefore had lost the Italian one. Moreover, according to the Italian law at that time, if you wanted to recover the Italian citizenship, you had to go back from US to Italy, spend a time in Italy, ask to the Italian government to recover the Italian citizenship, and then maybe you were considered again an Italian citizen. I mean, this is completely unfair. It was impossible because we are talking about 20s. Not like today, you take a flight and 8 hours you are in New York. Okay, so the time going from one part to the other of this difficult trip. So, I mean, there are also historical considerations, historical elements, which will be brought before the United Section, because a law must be interpreted and applied, also taking into consideration the practical and historical context in which they were applied.
And I think it's important to note and perhaps differentiate a little bit here for people that might not have studied this, that the minor issue, there was zero change to any law in Italy. This was strictly an interpretation change by the Department of the Interior that just one day said, we're going to change 100 plus years of jurisprudence, and the letter of the law stays the same. It's just a circulare, a single piece of paper from the department changed all of this for everybody, whereas Tajani was actually a change of the law.
Dominic, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. You gave me also another important element, because I mean, until I think October 2023, when 2024, when actually we had that circular of the ministry, actually the interpretation of the ministry was always in the sense that those children did not lose their Italian citizenship. So also from a practical point of view, even if they wanted to recover their Italian citizenship, even if they went to the Italian consulate asking, please, I want to be considered once again Italian citizen, the consulate would have answered, don't worry, for me you are. For me, you are an Italian citizen because this is my interpretation. Okay, so now the interpretation changed just 1 year ago, but I mean, all the children born in 20s, 30s, who would have gone to the consulate in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, would have listened to this kind of answer. Don't worry, you are Italian. You are not considered anymore. I mean, you are considered Italian for me, so you do not need to recover anything. Go home, you are Italian. So this is the absurd thing of the history, because now the ministry is asking to, of course, deceased people, of course, to recover to do something that they cannot do anymore because, of course, they are deceased.
And it creates a lot of interesting, complex situations. For example, I applied at a comune and I was approved, and my brother applied at the consulate and was not approved before the circolare, and now there's the minor issue there. So there's interesting issues of two people in exact same situations going through different channels and getting different results. So interesting. So recently you had a couple of cases scheduled at the Cassation Court on October 7. Were those cases heard, or have they been postponed due to the ongoing bigger United Section things that are going on?
Yes, postponed, waiting for the ruling of the United Section. Not only these two cases of mine, but also other pending cases related to the minor issue were suspended, were postponed, because we will also, immediately after, we will analyze those cases on the basis of the response of the United Section.
So that's the end of the questions that we planned to discuss on this, Marco. Is there anything else you would like to talk to the audience about before we sign off here?
Once again, thank you very much for inviting me today. A pleasure to be here, to stay with you. I hope that I clarify these questions, these doubts. I know that there were thousands of questions and thousands of doubts in the world of Italian citizenship law, which is a quite complicated subject in which there are juridical, historical, and also and today we are in a fluid situation in which there are public, private law matters involved. I mean, it is a very complicated matter. Find, and I want to let know all the people that not only me but all of us Italian lawyers involved in this kind of a fight, we are very motivated to make a good job to fight against this injustice that we are watching in the world of Italian citizenship law. You have to trust on the Italian justice, because until now the Italian justice always applied in a very clear and logical way what were the choices of the Italian legislature. The law always gave to the descendants the right to Italian citizenship. We live in a rule of law. We have, of course, jurisdiction which take care of possible unjust laws and are ready to declare them void if necessary, or simply unapplicable in the specific case. So this will be my and our battle and I'm pretty confident that at the end of the day, we will see the light in this quite dark time.
Well, with that, Marco, I want to express a immense gratitude for you and your time, and moreover for the not only the people watching, but the people that will continue to watch this later. You have given a lot of, you've answered a lot of the questions that I see asked over and over out there in the community, and you are one of the best sources of information. So a heartfelt thank you to you for that. For the people still watching, just so you know, I did have some video glitches. We will actually be editing this and putting out a full version. If there's any glitch on the viewing side, whether LinkedIn or YouTube, that will be cleaned up. And additionally, for the Spanish and Portuguese speakers, they will put out a translated version of this with subtitles so everybody can learn from everything that Marco has said here today. So with that, Marco, immense gratitude. I very much thank you for your time and the community. You've got a big community of supporters out there, and they very much appreciate your efforts as well as all the other Jure Sanguinis lawyers throughout Italy. So grazie mille, buona notte, and cannot wait to speak again.
Ciao a tutti, alla prossima.
Ciao, ciao.